the format is that we begin with chanting, which includes chanting the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. And then I'll lead a meditation, which will be followed by some reflections and an opportunity for you to ask questions. You can ask questions in the chat box if that's all right. And for clarification, I'm by all means, if you maybe unmute. Sometimes I get a question and I'm answering it because I think I understand, and then I realize, well, perhaps you can explain to me, oh no, actually that wasn't quite what I meant. So it's nice to be able, I think Wendy can give you the permission to unmute. So we'll start with the chanting of the 3, we'll start with the dedication of offerings, and then the chanting of the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. Yoso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho svakato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipando yassa bhagavato savaka sangho tammayam bhagavantam satamman sasangham ime sakare yatarahan aropite abhipujayama sadhuno bhante bhagava suchira parinibbutopi pachima janata nukampamanasa ime sakare dukkatapanna karabhute patikanhatu amhakanti garatam hitaya sukaya arahang samma sambuddho bhagava buddham bhagavantam abhivademi. Svakato bhagavata dhammo dhammam namasami. Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sangho sangham namami. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, dhammang saranang gacchami, sangham saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi sangham saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami, tatiyampi sangham saranang gacchami. Panatipata veramani sikkhabadang sammadiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Adinna dana veramani sikkhabadang sammadiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame sumi chachara veramani sikkhabadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Musavada veramani sikkhabadang samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura Maria Majjapamadhatana Veramani Sikkhabadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikkhabadani silena sugatin yanti silena bhogasampada silena diputin yanti tasma silam visuddhaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you for sharing the screen, Wendy. We have a Buddha Rupa to look at, which is very nice and a calming image. So we chant before we meditate. We don't have to, but many people do. And if you were to go to the monastery, then we would begin by chanting before we sit. So the chanting is something we can do mindfully. We can bring our attention to the present moment when we chant. And that's brings it's a way of establishing a mindfulness in a sitting before we sit. It's like it's conditioning. It's a kind of conditioning. By chanting, we're already ready to sit because we've done the chanting. We calm the mind. We've had to focus to a certain extent to be aware, to be with the present moment, so that when we're chanting, we're with the moment, with what we're doing, with those words. And I don't know about you, but for me, I have to remember to keep bringing my attention back to concentrate on the words I'm chanting, because I'm very familiar with them. So the mind can wander. So it's a good exercise to be in the present moment. Of course, we also chanting the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. We're establishing an attitude. With the 3 refuges, our right attitude. With the 5 precepts, we're establishing sila, virtue. Sila helps us to let go of the hindrances, the 5 hindrances that obstruct our focusing, our concentration. The mind's easily distracted when we are not established in morality, in sila. So by chanting the 5 precepts, we establish ourselves in sila, in harmlessness, in honesty, in awareness. And the fifth precept's about being awake and aware. So the three refuges are our attitude that we bring to meditation. So it's very important, very helpful to establish the right attitude to meditation from the outset. When we reflect on the three refuges, we reflect on the Buddha who realized enlightenment, but more than the person, we reflect on enlightenment itself. That realization of enlightenment is our direction of travel in the meditation practice. That's what we're heading towards. Not through grasping and attaching to a goal or trying to become a Buddha. If we try to become something, try to get something, this is not helpful in meditation. That takes us away from the present moment. It becomes a grasping and a doing activity. But to simply see the Buddha's enlightenment as a direction of travel, like a signpost, that's where we're heading. It's a gentle easing into that awakening. This is what our meditation is for. The Dhamma, which is like the tools we meditate with, isn't it? So our right attitude is to use, to reflect wisely on the Dhamma, so that we establish right mindfulness, for example. This is what we're doing, to establish mindfulness in a skillful way, on wholesome, for a wholesome purpose. We're doing this in order to realize the truth, the way things are. That's the purpose. That makes it right. That's our intention is right. So that's our establishing the right attitude, supported by Dhamma. And the Sangha, this is we're doing it together, aren't we? Coming together today. We are benefiting from the presence of many people, all with the same aspiration to realize the way things are, to realize freedom. So it's good to establish the right attitude to meditation practice from the outset. And that's the chanting can help to do that. So as I said, one of the aspects of the right attitude to meditation is not to do it in order to get something or to get rid of something or to become something. It's a nurturing practice. We're nurturing rather than trying to attain. There's a lot of forgiveness in nurture. We're willing to accept ourselves as we are rather than demand that we're different. So to understand, to see and to realize, we need to welcome in whatever the mind presents it to us. We need to welcome it in, because it will teach us, we'll learn from that. So we're open, we're willing to open. Mindfulness is an opening to direct experience, but we're not saying what that experience should be. We're simply willing to open and to experience how it is. This way of practice, of developmental practice, is our right attitude again. Willingness to accept everything without preference. So when we begin our meditation, if we set out to say it should be like this, then we'll fail. But if we don't set a precondition about how it should be, then it's not possible to fail. Simply, we can be with the way it is. Mindfulness is simply that much. It's not saying it should be like this. It's opening up to the way it is. So it's not possible to have a bad meditation. Simply to notice is all we need to do. So, having established our attitude of opening to the present moment, then it is helpful to bring our attention into the body. Why is that? Because it's a grounding experience. It's like when we say having our feet on the ground is having established some sort of realism, or being realistic about life. We have our feet on the ground. Well, we bring our attention into the body. It's like having our feet on the ground. It roots us in the material, in what we call rupa, the material realm. It takes us out of the mental realm to a certain extent. And this is a very calming realm to inhabit. It's not moving so fast. It's stabilizing, touching the earth. This brings us into a natural calming sense, slowing down, relaxing, bringing us out of the busy mind. So it's helpful, I find, to take a few deep breaths, just to ground ourselves into the body, ground our attention into the body. Bringing our attention into the body, we can notice how restless it might be. The body could be quite restless. When you give your attention to different areas of the body, you can notice areas of tension, sensation, even pain that you weren't aware of. So it's very helpful to deliberately bring our attention into the sensations of the body, recognizing the restlessness, inhabiting the body, if you like, recognizing the tension of different parts, being willing to unclench, just inviting those tense muscles to unclench. Not saying it should be different, it's fine the way it is. But if it's a tension there that we can let go of, then let go of it. Why not? it can be helpful to deliberately, starting at the top of the head, working down to the soles of the feet and back up, to really give some time to noticing different parts of the body and where the tension and sensations might be. Just to spend a little time with each part of the body is a way of connecting. Perhaps connecting to a body that we've neglected so far today. We may not have really given it much attention at all. It's a reconnecting, isn't it, with the physical form. Whilst noticing sensations in the body, it's also worth paying attention to the posture. So you may notice tension in the shoulders and realize that you can just relax them. Letting them drop can be very helpful. That you may notice that the back could be that bit straighter. You can bring attention into the muscles at the base of the spine which support the back. Just bringing mindfulness into the body in that way, you may find that the body finds its own upright posture quite naturally, without us forcing it or making it into something that it doesn't feel comfortable with. It can be helpful to give attention to a particular object, such as the breath, for example. Noticing sensations of inhalation, exhalation. When we do this, we just need to notice one breath at a time. If we can just be present with one breath in the present moment, that's enough. When we experience mental objects, that might be most of your meditation practice. You may find the mind's very busy. Then it can be helpful to simply name, to get a context, some sort of framework. So what is it? I find it perhaps sometimes enough just to say, that's the busy mind. Or sometimes you might experience an emotion. You might be able to say, that's anger, frustration, restlessness, or anxiety, whatever it is. And naming it can give us a perspective on what's happening. Help us to step back from the objects, the story that are creating the emotion. So that we can get a context, some sort of sense of this is the mind with anger, rather than following the story that's creating it. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that simply return to the object, the breath. Or maybe it returns. And if there's something which seems to stick around in the mind, it's not going away, it's persistent, then it can be helpful to investigate that. So we first of all gave it a label. Now let the label go and investigate. What is it really? What's really happening? What does it really feel like to be angry or to be anxious or restless or whatever? What's the experience like? Not to use the label any more, but to investigate, to see how it really is. Simply allow it to manifest without interfering. See what happens. What does it have to teach us? We're not trying to learn about the story, but just what's the experience like? How does it feel? We're not pushing anything away. We're not saying it should be like this. We're investigating how it is. And at any time you can return to the breath, or even you may get a sense of breathing, even breathing into the emotion, into the feeling. Which might help let go. But we're not trying to get rid of anything. Sometimes we just have to let things be, so we can learn what they have to teach us. And one of the things we often learn is how we create suffering out of things that we don't like. It shouldn't be this way. Why? Why shouldn't it be this way? What if we could just accept the way it is? How would that feel? Perhaps rather than trying to control, we can just allow. Then maybe there's a peacefulness in that, a letting go, a laying down of something. A laying down of our resistance. When we don't interfere, we can let things go to their completion, to come to their own natural ending. If we experience something, let's say, maybe an unpleasant state of mind, an angry state, experiencing anger, knowing it as it is. But if we just stay with it, with that feeling, then it can't but cease. It has to. It will cease. It can't be sustained forever. We're not adding to it. We're just observing it. It will run its course when we don't interfere. But if we try to interfere, we do it out of aversion. trying to control, trying to get away from something we don't like. So if we just let it be, that's an act of kindness, letting it be, let it cease in its own time. It will teach us what it has to teach. Whatever that is. It may be that all things cease. Accepting ourselves as we are. This is what we're doing. And that's the greatest kindness that we can give. That's a great act of loving kindness, unconditional loving kindness. Simply to accept people as they are. And so we accept ourselves as we are. We're not being critical, judging. we're laying down a burden, so that makes the heart lighter. Every time we let go, we lighten the burden we're carrying, and that's a joyful thing to do. It's an act of kindness. We're bringing kindness into the world. Through being kind to ourselves, we're establishing loving kindness that will manifest in the world to others. So it's as though a light were established within us that can shine in the world, because we're not asking anything of anyone. This is unconditional love. It's freely offered. It's based on acceptance. Ding. 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 So wonder if you could remove the screen sharing. If you're there, Wanda, can you take away the Buddha Rupa from the screen. Not that it matters. Anyway, I'll just say a few things. Have a few reflections on, and maybe that will encourage you to ask some questions. So that they would be, very much appreciate your questions, which you can put into chat if you can. You can start putting your questions in now. You don't need to wait, but I'll just say a few things. Some of the things which perhaps occur to me from the meditation. One is, why would it be? Why is acceptance the greatest kind of love, a kind of unconditional love? It's actually, you could say, acceptance is perhaps more connected to compassion. There's a non-interference in that, isn't there? We're willing to accept people as they are, we don't have to interfere with them in order to make them into something. That they have to be somebody different for us to love them. So we're willing to love them as they are. That acceptance comes with a willingness not to interfere. So they may do something that's irritating. It might be. There are times when it's okay to point out that is irritating. It's okay to mention these things, but the principle of compassionate listening, it's a listening, isn't it? A willingness to listen and not interfere. And when we've been acting with compassion, we don't try to pretend that we understand or know what the other person's feeling. We often rush into telling them, "Oh yes, what you're feeling is this." Well, no, it isn't. We don't know. They're doing their best to perhaps tell us, but we don't really know how it feels for them. So we just listen and don't interfere. And in the same way, we do have a listen, an inner listening when we're meditating. Listening to that inner dialogue, or even noticing sensations in the body is a listening, isn't it? So that's a listening and not interfering activity. It's accepting things the way they are is to not interfere. Because when we interfere, we're saying they're not good enough. There's something wrong I've got to put right. It has to be different for me to accept you. So non-interference is a representation of acceptance. And that's very interesting, because with meditation we often have a very controlling approach. We try to control. We want to control the mind. We want to knock it into shape. And it seems like a good idea, thinking that we'll control the mind. And after all, There are places that you can read the Buddha's words, that a controlled mind brings great benefits. But if we approach our meditation from the point of view of trying to control, then it's very unforgiving. It's very critical. There's a saying in Zen that you control I don't know, is it a horse? Yeah, by putting it in a big field. If you confine it into a small field, put a fence around it, then the horse becomes very restless and it's bashing up against the side. It wants to get out. But if you put it in a big field, it's at ease. And so, we don't need to be controlling through confining, but setting free, letting it go, letting go. Relax. Accepting things, being more accepting of the way things are is more helpful than trying to control. And controlling just appeals to our it's what we want to do. We may just have that habit, that conditioning that says we should bring everything under control. And we may have been taught it. We may have learned it in our educational system that we should be able to control. And that's quite inhibiting. And unforgiving. It can be very effort-filled practice. We're trying to do this, to get this out of it. We're trying to get this by doing this. So it's very much a doing activity. When my meditation practice isn't a doing activity, not mindfulness anyway. Mindfulness is about being present, being awake and aware. We're not trying to get anywhere, do anything to get something. We're being present now, awake and aware in the moment, with however it is. If we're doing something, we're trying to get something in the future. We're doing it to get a result. We're not really in the present. To be in the present, we have to accept, don't we? So the presence now is like this. We could never be in the present moment if we don't have an attitude of acceptance. If we're trying to change it, then it can't be in the present. It's got to be in the future. We're going to try and do something now to get something later. So noticing the breath, there isn't time to interfere with the breath. We just have to be with the present, the breath as it is now. It's not about trying to make the breath into something. Being with the breath, just breathing. Very often, it's quite a difficult training to not interfere, because our conditioning is so powerful, so strong, that we've interfered before we realize we've done it. The many things are manifest in the mind and suppress so quickly we don't notice, because we interfere so compulsively with our experience that we push it away without even realizing it's arisen. And our meditation practice is really very much about opening up and being aware, softening, and noticing that subtle vibration which tells us, oh, something happened there, and I pushed it away. It might just be a vibration. We realize that there was a resistance there. Something came up and we resisted it. It didn't allow it to come up. So we have to learn how to bring our mind, our attention back. Sometimes we have to take a few steps back, go back to that feeling that was suppressed, just to try and see if we can just go back to the feelings, just to be with it. How was that? What was that really? What happened there? What was that feeling? Let's just be with that and see what it was. What happened? What was that about? That I pushed away something. What was it? Often we can take even use the Dhamma to suppress. So if we have heard in the Dhamma that they're teaching of not self, and we use it like as though it were a view and something that we've got to hold on to and know and apply to our experience, then when the sense of self arises, we can hit it over the head, say, no, not self, not self. And so we never get to examine it. We can push it away with a view. It's like holding on to a view. No, there is no self. How can it manifest? And this is really unhelpful. So we have to really do just the opposite. We have to allow in our experience of, oh, this is how the self is manifest, like this. This is what it feels like. It's like this. Oh, that's interesting. That's not. We're not believing in our experience, but we're not pushing it away. We're not running away from it. We're allowing it to manifest. This is how it feels. This is what it's like. Oh, that's what it's like to feel conceited. Oh, it feels like this. That's that feeling of pride. Oh, it feels like this. Well, that's feeling of inferiority. Oh, I'm not good enough. That person's better than me. It feels like this. We have to let these things in. Don't push them away thinking, oh, but there is no self, or something like that. That's ridiculous. It's not what the Buddha was teaching at all. He was teaching us to examine. His teaching is signposts. Look at this. Look here in this direction. Take a look. So we have to let things manifest to be fully known and understood. Because we're not trying to get rid of anything or destroy anything, simply to understand. When we understand, things lose their power. They have no power. So if you're running away from something, we give it power, but when we allow it in, then it loses it. It has no power. It can just come and go because it's understood. got some chats. That's good. Is letting go the same as acceptance? Well, interestingly, that's an interesting question. Is letting go the same as acceptance? Because sometimes acceptance is bearing with, and letting go can be getting rid of. So if, let's say, you're experiencing a wonderful, blissful state, then letting go of that is good. It's fine to let go of that. If we feel, to let go of our attachment to that blissful experience, this is the right thing to do, to let go. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're not saying it shouldn't be this way. But if we're not careful, we'll attach to that. We'll want it to come back, or we want it to last. And we'll be upset and disappointed if we're not careful. So we let it go. Why not? Why wouldn't we let it go? Why would we create dukkha out of it by grasping it? And that's when we let go. But if we're experiencing a painful experience, let's say we have a pain in the body, in the foot, then letting go of that pain, we might just try to suppress it, try to get away from it. Now, when I talk about letting go of pain, then sometimes people say, oh, well, I was quite successful at letting go of the pain in my foot. I focused on the breath. So by bringing their focusing to something else, they were able to let go of the pain in their foot. But that's actually running away from, not accepting, not letting go. Letting go of the pain in our foot is letting go of our resistance to it. In other words, it's acceptance, isn't it? To allow and to fully accept the pain in our foot. We go into the pain, we go right into it. Letting go is letting go of our resistance. So that's why letting go isn't the same as acceptance. Acceptance of something, letting go of something we don't like might be resistance, not acceptance. Might be the opposite. Letting go is a wonderful mantra to use, but we can use it too much. We can go too far with it. We can let go of things which we should really be investigating, the things we don't like, and we should be bringing them in, moving towards instead of away from. The things that we don't like, we recoil from. And letting go is moving towards the things we don't like. It's letting go of our resistance. What do we do if emerging negative emotions overwhelm us? This is a question from Bernadetta. Yeah, well, we need to be. There's a wisdom that we need in our practice. If we feel that we're getting overwhelmed by emotions, then we just step back. It's not helping. So if, for example, I mentioned anger, let's say you're experiencing a very powerful anger, that might not be the best time to investigate anger. Perhaps that's too much. too powerful, too overwhelming. Perhaps it's the object that's causing that to arise is so great. We can't help but go back to it over and over, just keeping on reinforcing the anger. We can't resist that. And that's not helping. Whereas to understand anger, it doesn't take that much. Perhaps we should wait until we've established an attitude of loving kindness, so coming from loving kindness, then opening up from there to somebody who we are perhaps not particularly fond of. There's not a big, there's no big deal, but there's, for some obscure reason, that I don't know why it is. It's just we don't feel very fond of them. So they're we don't warm towards them for some reason. So bringing up that resistance, that sort of negativity, and seeing what's that about? What's that feel like? How's that? And that's a kind of subtle kind of aversion, isn't it? It's not a big full-blown anger, but it's us becoming familiar with aversion and allowing and opening up to that, and in understanding how that feels. And then working through that to the end. How does that feel? Where's that come from? What's the experience of that? It's a painful experience, isn't it? So that's unpleasant. But it comes to an end. It works its way through and ceases. So we'll get familiar with that, how that works. If I allow that to come up, it will cease in its own time. We know that now. So having taken a small step, we can take a bigger step. We can find perhaps someone who creates more resistance, more anger, and find that with coming from a position of loving kindness, and having established ourselves in loving kindness, we're more confident to allow that negativity to come up. So this is a kind of skillful way so that we can eventually allow anger to come. Because we understand it, we know what it is. We're not frightened of anger. As long as we're frightened and we're pushing away out of fear, we give things power. But when we stop pushing them away, we can let them in, and there's no resistance there. We can let it come and go. That doesn't mean we won't have emotions, but they'll come and go. We won't create suffering out of them. I think if someone have any other questions, and if you want to, maybe I think Wendy might be able to give you the opportunity to unmute if you would prefer.
Hi, Martin. One step ahead there.
Hi.
I was just interested in what you're saying around, so something like anger, for example.
Yeah.
Could you, is it right to say that you would accept anger, or more the things that are causing the anger? And so is anger a result of a resistance, or can you resist anger itself, if that makes sense, or any emotion? Okay.
Well, we can resist anger itself because we can think, I shouldn't be angry. I'm not an angry person. This is not who I am, for example. And then that's not a very helpful way of looking at it, because clearly if you're experiencing anger, it is who you are in that moment, isn't it? We are an angry person at that moment. What we're doing is denying. It's a denial. We're pretending that that's not who, I'm not an angry person. That's not helping. So yes, we can resist anger itself. And conversely, when we can experience anger, we can say that is who I am. And that doesn't help either. So we can see how we, the attachment of a self around self-identification of emotional states is how harmful that is, how unhelpful that is. Because they just come and go, don't they? They're not who we are. But it's in order to understand that, it's an easy thing to say, they are not who we are. That's not a belief. It's not something we can believe ourselves into. It's something we have to see through our own understanding. It's a realization of, when we understand emotions, how they manifest, how they come and go, and we realize, no, I am not that. That's not who I am. In a sense, I can admit that I feel angry, and that's who I am in that moment. But it doesn't last, does it? So from that, it was an illusion. It's not. I made it up in a sense. It's something I've made up. I made up the story that I was angry. It's like I've added. It's something I made up. It's not who I am. It just came and went. It was nonsense, really. It was just a conditioned way of thinking. Often we are, let's say, we think I'm an angry person because somebody said I was. You are an angry person. Or you've analysed yourself, but psychologically you said this. You've been to somebody who's told you that you're an angry person. That's not helping. It fixes it in our minds so that we become something fixed and permanent. Then we are deluded, aren't we? But when we allow emotions to come and go, and we understand them for what they are, we're not deluded by them. We don't attach a sense of self that's not unreal, that's unreal, and self-created, a delusion. So that's helpful to understand that, yes, we can attach to anger or to an emotion, and we can let it go. Yeah, because whatever we can attach to, we can let go. And then I really see it like, it's like the wind blowing through a tree. At the moment, when the leaves are not on the trees, the wind just blows straight through them because there's nothing there to stick, to resist. There's no resistance. So that in emotions can just come and go. We don't become someone who doesn't experience emotion, but they can be fully experienced, but there's no resistance, and that means that they can just come and go. So then I think maybe, can we let go of the story? Was that maybe the other aspect of what Will was saying? Is it possible to let go of the story? Well, it definitely is. In order to investigate anger, we really need to let go of the story, because otherwise we just keep adding fuel to the fire. And the only way we can really investigate it and understand it is to stop doing that. So we have to allow anger to cease in its own time. You have to stop adding to it. So you really do have to develop the practice of letting go of the story that we're creating these emotional states out of. And there's lots of ways of doing that. So if you're I was thinking, what came to mind was actually not anger, but lust, for example. So if an image of somebody that is causing lust to arise, then that lustful feeling is not going to go away if you keep bringing back the image. But if you were to take your mind away from the image, then you would stop adding fuel to the fire. You would be able to see lust and allow it to cease. It would cease in its own time because you're not adding fuel to the fire. I think somebody's not unmuted. I'll mute Sharon. Maybe that's it. Yeah. And by simply moving your attention away from the image that's causing that to arise, then we can investigate the emotional state, and it will cease in its own time. And that's how we're letting go, in a sense. We're letting go of the emotion through not adding the fuel to the fire, but we're not running away from it. So we're willing to investigate it and let it run its course. And that is especially difficult with something like lust, because it's so powerful and strong that it's one of the most difficult ones to investigate. But nevertheless, we have to allow everything. We have to open up to everything, because as long as we're running away, as long as we can't allow things in, there's fear. And it helps. It's an incredibly beneficial thing to be able to open up to powerful emotional states, so that we're not frightened of them. Because then it really helps us in our relationships, because we don't let them get in the way. You can if for example, if you're a man and you find it very difficult to relate to women without seeing them as sexual objects, then that is a real problem for you in relating to people, to half of humanity. So to really investigate lust and to learn how to let it go, so that it doesn't interfere with your relationships, is incredibly beneficial. So it's amazing how many men have problems with women. I would say it's because they're frightened of them. And that's because they're frightened of this object that they feel they need to run away from, because it's very, very, very powerful. Lust is very powerful. So out of fear, we push people away. We can't have relationships that are based on truth and honesty. So it's really worth investigating these things. Very helpful, incredibly helpful. Has anyone else got any questions?
Hi Martin, could I ask something? It's Kay.
Hi Kay.
It's Kay. Hi, thank you very much for your talk tonight. Based on what Will was saying, I was just wondering what you thought about about sort of I am angry scenario. Is it worth looking into I? What is angry? Who is the I that is angry? Do you think there's a help in doing that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think so. This, as I said to you, said already, the idea that I am an angry person is very unhelpful, or that I am not an angry person is equally unhelpful. Bringing the sense of self-identity just confuses everything. It's very difficult. Makes it very difficult to see things clearly, doesn't it? When we bring the sense of self into it, we identify with I am this and I am that, is very deluded. So it creates a sense of delusion. It just distorts everything. So if you can let go of this self-identity, then you can see things as they are. That's kind of the essence of our practice, isn't it? To be able to see things clearly. So we don't color them in. That what the self-identity does is we we paint, we color everything in. We don't see it as it really is. We color it in with the way we would like it to be, with our preferences, or the way we don't want it to be. I mean, the way we would like it to be, or the way we think it ought to be. It shouldn't be like this, it should be like that. And this is so it's really unhelpful. Well, this is so deep rooted, isn't it? That we think we know. We think I am somebody who knows. That's really unhelpful, because we stop learning, we stop investigating, or we think that I'm a hopeless person. I'll never understand. This is really really an unhelpful way to think. So it just gets in the way the whole time. And it's good to let that go little bit by little bit, but not to suppress it, just through investigation. Oh, I missed that. I'm going to have to go back a little bit. Somebody said something. Some people prefer to say there is whatever emotion, rather than attaching it to an I. There is an emotion. There is an emotion. Yes, I think that's a wiser way of looking at it. It's obviously really deluded to talk in terms of my anger. But on the other hand, it might be how we experience it. So to be real, to really see how it is, then not to pretend. So there is a danger of using words and just to talk about to refer to things as there is an emotion. But if you were to say to somebody who let's say, if we feel feeling angry and somebody else is on the receiving end of it, then you say, oh, there is anger, it's not me. Well, but they're experiencing you being angry. So they would see that as a kind of denial, that it's not, you're pretending. So you can be very careful you don't take language or ideas like this as a way to pretend that it's not like it's not really you experiencing. You are angry. In that moment, in that present moment experience, you feel angry. You have to be careful you don't deny the self that's in it, because if we do, we won't see it as it is. We won't see that clearly. I don't really, although it's stupid in a way, it's a ridiculous way of looking at things. If you say, I am angry, it's a completely stupid thing to say. On one level, it's how it feels. So on another level, it's real. And so it's really important to accept that it feels like this. I feel angry. Because that's the only way to understand it. You have to accept it so that you can investigate how it is. Is there any method we can use to remind ourselves to do this? I find it tricky to remember to do it in the moment the emotion is experienced. That's right. Yeah, we do. We have to find ways to step back. It's called mindfulness, isn't it? We remind. Mindfulness is sometimes called remembering. And I think, well, why is that? It's because we have to remember to do it. So reminding ourselves to step back from the moment so that we can notice how it is. So then we can notice emotion that way. So you might experience, the first thing we experience is a feeling. So like I said, the first thing we might notice is a vibration. We might not notice it. But when we become more aware, then the first thing we might notice is there's a sort of restless vibration happening in the body. We think, oh, hey, what's happening? Something's coming up. There's something happening here. And we're already established in mindfulness. We're curious to know what's going on. And then what's going to be manifest. something's going to be manifest. It's almost like, you know, when you hit your finger with a hammer, you've hit your finger with the hammer. You can look at the finger, but it doesn't hurt yet. I think, wow, that's incredible. Sometimes it just hurts straight away, but sometimes you hit your finger with a hammer. You can already, you know, it's going to hurt, but it doesn't. It hasn't happened yet. Oh, and then it hurts. It's almost like that. You can get the sense of, I'm going to experience something here. That person, being that angry person, has spoken to me in that way. You know, I'm going to experience an emotional response, and then it's almost like you're looking for it. When's that going to happen? If somebody criticizes you, you think, I wonder how that's going to feel. And then when the emotional response occurs, you're interested, you're curious. So you're already stepping back, and you're investigating. You're willing to investigate the emotion when it arises. And so this is a kind of method, isn't it? The establishing of a habit of mindfulness is a way of investigation. It's not just about noticing. It also gives us that capacity to investigate. So there's a vibration, and something happened. Something's happening. What is it? Oh, that's I can feel anger arising. And because we've noticed it, we don't have to react. We can be more responsive rather than reactive to that. That's I think if with mindfulness, if in terms of doing something like this, I remember a few weeks ago at the Buddhist Society, somebody who listened to me must have been saying something similar. The next time I was teaching, they sent me a message saying that they tried this, they put it into practice, and they'd really benefited from doing it in that on this one occasion. And it's just like that. If you can do this once, then you can do it again. So mindfulness, it's just do it once. You know, if you do it now, that's just this once. Then you've got the possibility of doing it again. And it's just doing it in the present. Being present now is all we need to do. We don't, let's say with mindfulness of breathing, we don't have to set. It's not really helpful to say, I'm going to focus my breath on my mind on the breath for 10 minutes. Just do it now. Don't worry about 10 minutes. Just do it now. You just be aware of one inhalation and one exhalation. That's the way to practice. So if we can simply step back from the moment now, that's good enough. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming along this evening. And I'd like to draw the evening to a close. I've really appreciated your questions. Thank you for that. I'd like to close with the closing homage. So I'll share the screen again, if I can. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhamman Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining this evening. And I hope you have a good week. Maybe see you again in a week. Or I'll be not teaching next week, but I think Nick will be. But I'll see you again soon.